Sky Guardian has a question for you. Do you think it's time for us to read the Vachanāmrut? A text from the BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha.
Ah, the Vachanamrut, beautiful teachings indeed. Yes, a perfect time like Arjuna receiving the Gita from Krishna. Dive in, my dear ones.
As you wish. All right. Let us read from a section of the Vachanāmrut. This is a series of discourses from Bhagwan Swaminarayan, who was a great being in the turn of the 19th century. Here we are reading Gadhadā 1:42, the observance of the moral do's and don'ts. This is often filled with technical Sanskrit terms, but fortunately we now have Mataji here. If I have any questions, I'm sure that she would be glad to help out. On Maha Sudhi the 6th, Samvat 1876, or the 21st of January 1820, Shriji Maharaj was sitting facing west on a large decorated cot on the platform under the neem tree in the front of the mandir of Sri Vasudeva Narayan in Dada Khachar's Darbar in Gadhadā. He had tied a white pug around his head. He had also covered himself with a white cotton cloth and was wearing a white case. Bunches of yellow flowers had been placed upon both of his ears. At that time, an assembly of munis, as well as devotees from various places, had gathered before him. Also seated in the assembly were some Vedanta Brahmins, Vedanti Brahmins. These are not of the same spiritual tradition. They are of a study of Vedanta, which is the philosophical section of the Vedas. They are often more non-dual in nature, particularly Advaita Vedantins. Seeing them, Shriji Maharaj said, "Those who study or listen to the Vedanta scriptures claim the moral do's and don'ts are false. Svarg and Narak, heaven and hell, which are attained by observing them, are also false. The disciples who attain them are false, and the Guru is false as well, the spiritual teacher. Brahman, the ultimate reality, pervades everything, and it alone is Satya, real. But with what understanding do those who speak in this manner propound this? In actual fact, the Acharya of all Vedantis, Shankaracharya, had his own disciples keep a staff and a gourd. He also enforced one should recite the Bhagavad Gita and the Vishnu Sahasranam. One should perform puja of Vishnu. Vishnu is the form of God in the all-pervading aspect, the preserver, the maintainer. This is in contrast to the other two ways of seeing God, as either a creator or a destroyer. But those have a time component to them. For the Vaishnavas, it's important to see God primarily as a maintainer, a preserver, which is present here, always, within every change, ongoing. Those who are young should bow down to those who are senior in age, and one should beg for alms, food, only from the houses of a pious and pure Brahmin, a saintly kind of being, a spiritually minded person. So, because Shankaracharya propounded the observance of various moral do's and don'ts in this way, can you claim that he did not have complete jnana, knowledge? Have those who claim to have recently attained jnana and have falsified the observance of these do's and don'ts become greater than Shankaracharya? Actually, it seems as if they are speaking out of absolute foolishness. There is a rivalry between Vaishnavas and Vedantis going on for thousands of years. This is a Vaishnava text, by the way. In reality, those moral do's and don'ts that have been falsified in the scriptures can be understood through the following example. If a large ship sets out to sea for a year, then neither the shoreline ahead nor the shoreline behind can be seen. In fact, even huge mountains on either shoreline cannot be seen. In fact, wherever one looks, only water can be seen. But besides water, nothing else is visible. If one looks up, the enormous waves of the ocean rising up will be seen. So even above, only water is visible. In this situation, people sitting in the ship would claim, there is only water, nothing else exists. The principle behind this example is that one who has attained a Nirvikalpa state, a kind of absorption one can reach through meditative practices, in the form of Brahman, the ultimate reality, claims there is only Brahman. Besides that, everything else, such as jivas, individual souls, ishvars, maya, etc., is false. Hearing words written in the scriptures supporting this view, a person who has not even attained that state claims all moral do's and don'ts to be false. On the one hand, they care for their partner, attend to their children, and meticulously perform all worldly activities, believing them to be real. Yet, on the other hand, they falsify these do's and don'ts which have been prescribed by the scriptures. Those who preach such jnana, knowledge, in this world should be known as extremely wretched and Gnostics. After all, it was because of the apprehension that such a Gnostic nature may creep into people's hearts that Shankaracharya composed the Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudha Mate, which shares, O fool, worship God, worship God, worship God. And Sky Guardian wanted me to let you all know as well that it is debated whether Shankaracharya actually wrote this text that is cited here. Oftentimes it was seditious to write various scriptures and have them gain authority on their own, so they would be accredited to great sages like Shankaracharya, who is famous for propounding the interpretation of Vedanta known as Advaita, non-duality. For example, where it says, "O fool," Shankara probably wouldn't say such terms, so keep that in mind. This is from the Charpat Panjari. And many other verses in praise of Vishnu. He also composed several verses extolling Shivaji, Shiva, Ganapati, Surya, and many other devas, After hearing these verses, all of the devas appear to be Satya, real. It was with this intention in mind that Shankaracharya composed verses in praise of all these devas. Despite this, however, unorthodox scholars of today falsify them. In addition, they claim, regardless of how severe a sin a person with Gyan may commit, it would not affect them. But they say this out of foolishness. Besides, consider this. Of all those who have renounced and become Paramahansas, great beings, Jadbharat is the best. In fact, the story of Jadbharat has been noted in each of the Puranas and all the Vedanta scriptures. That great Jadbharat was also the son of Urushabdev Bhagwan in his previous life. Renouncing his kingdom, he went to live in the forest. There he developed affection for a deer, although that was merely out of compassion. This mistake caused him to be reborn as a deer. Like the deer, then, he attained a form with 4 legs, a short tail, and small horns on his head. In comparison, the Gopis, the milk maidens of Vraj, were attached to Paramatma Sri Krishna Bhagwan out of lust. Despite this, they were still able to overcome God's Maya, material existence, and attain the Nirgun Akshardham, the formless celestial abode of God after becoming Gunatit. The reason for this was that Sri Krishna Bhagwan himself was Purushottam. He was Gunatit, and his form was divine. So because the Gopis developed affection for him, either knowingly or unknowingly, they became Gunatit as well. Whereas Bharatji became a deer, even though he had developed affection for the deer out of compassion. Therefore, no matter how great one may be, worldly influence only leads to harm. Conversely, regardless of how grave a sinner a person may be, if they maintain profound association with truth, the absolute truth, that Satya, that reality of Source, God, then that person also becomes absolutely pure and attains liberation. Of course, if Sri Krishna Bhagwan was not Gunatit himself, then his devotees, the Gopis, would not have attained the Gunatit state. But because they did attain the Gunatit state, Sri Krishna Bhagwan was most certainly flawless, Gunatit and divine. Vedantis also claim everything is pervaded by Brahman. But just as the Gopis developed affection for Sri Krishna, similarly, all beings develop affection for their partners. But they do not attain what the Gopis attained. Instead, they attain dismal narak, a birth in the lower realm. Therefore, the prescribed moral do's and don'ts are indeed true, not false. Whoever falsifies them will be consigned to narak as well. Having said this, Shriji Maharaj bid Jai Sachitanand, victory to existence, consciousness and bliss, to the assembly, and returned to his residence. Now, there were some Sanskrit terms that I am unfamiliar with from this section. Thank you for listening and for patience. Why don't we ask Mataji about Purushottam and Gunatit? Oh, Mataji, after reading Gadhadā 142 from the Vachanāmrut, I was wondering about the meaning of the Sanskrit words Purushottam and Gunatit. Could you tell me what they mean? And to the rest of the Sangha as well.
Of course, dear one. Purushottam means the supreme being, the highest form of God. Gunatit refers to one who is beyond the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, pure and blissful.
Thank you, Mataji.
You're most welcome, dear heart. Keep the questions flowing, like the Ganges.